So recently I tested the BYD Seal and it definitely sparked a conversation in the comments. So I guess the question is, are Chinese cars and Chinese EVs any good? Are they taking over, you know, on the cars that are sold here? And importantly, what's the build quality like? Are they a car that you can use day to day here in the UK? And more important question, what on earth is BYD doing in a Mercedes-Benz dealership? All of this and more in today's video on the BYD Atto 3 review. So, starting on the exterior first of the Atto 3. Now, a weird name for a start, and especially when I reviewed the BYD Seal, they're kind of almost like ocean inspired, they say on their website. So a lot of elements you'll see on the inside actually have like ocean themes, and actually you'll find a lot of the naming of their newest cars, the Seal of course, which I reviewed recently, and the Dolphin as well. So definitely ocean inspired. I actually quite like this, to be honest. It's actually very, very sleek. There's a lot of similarities compared to the BYD Seal from before. Obviously big BYD badge in the middle, which in the UK, I went through this in the BYD Seal review, stands for Build Your Dreams. And a few of you called me out saying, no, it doesn't. Well, in fact, it does say Build Your Dreams on the back. However, under a bit of research, I did actually, of course, find out that the BYD actually did originally stand for something else to do with a name of something and a street. Its original origins anyway. So personally, if I was buying a car, I think I'd remove that. Maybe just have BYD there. Build Your Dreams just is, yeah, I'm not sure I'd want that on the car. But anyway, apart from that, looks wise, I think it looks quite nice. Now, compared to the BYD Seal that I reviewed very recently, that was very much a saloon, and albeit a high performance saloon at that, because it was pretty fast. This one's a little bit more tamer and certainly a lot more practical, being an SUV. One thing I wanted to point out though is the location of the charge port, because normally with cars that are certainly EVs I reviewed, they're usually on the back left or the back right, and this threw me actually, because when it was delivered, so I could try it out for the week, the person drove it forwards onto my drive, and then I got into it, turned it around the other way so I plug it in, and yeah, it's actually this side, so he did do it right. I just didn't realise it was this way around. But yeah, it's a simple press and AC and DC charging in there. We'll go through the charge speeds and times and range and that sort of thing in a bit on the tech specs. But yeah, let's have a look at the rear of the car. So yeah, I actually quite like the styling of this one, to be honest. Just like the BYD Seal, it's kind of got you know, some smoother panels to give it that aerodynamics and efficiency, but then it has some more pointier edges like on the front. This is the bit that I didn't like on the back, the Build Your Dreams lettering. I'd rather it just say BYD potentially, like much down here, but you could debadge it, I'm sure, because it's the same kind of letters, so I'm sure you could ask a BYD dealer to debadge it. That's just my personal opinion, my preference. In terms of the actual size of it, it's not actually a massive SUV, as I mentioned. It's actually very similar size for regular viewers of my channel to like a Mercedes GLA. Maybe just a little bit bigger. It's very, very similar. Speaking of, let's go through those dimensions now. So dimensions wise for this one, the length is 4,455 millimeters, width 2,050 millimeters, and height 1,615. So certainly not too big for parking. Now, when it comes to trims and packages, again, BYD do something a little bit different here. So just like the BYD Seal, you know how when you shop for a car, they have, a car manufacturer has like so many different trims, wheel options, packages, optional equipment, and engines and that sort of thing. And sometimes you don't even know what to go for, and you don't know what package to choose and that sort of thing. They do it again differently with this one. So in the UK, it's super easy to pick one. Basically, there's 3 trims for this car. However, in the UK, there are only 2. So these are called Comfort and Design. And there's about a £2,000 price difference between the 2. So yes, this starts at £37,695. And I hear you, you might be wondering, well, what's the difference between Comfort and Design? I had a very quick look in their brochure. Basically, from what I could see, it's an electric tailgate, there's ambient lighting on the door side, an upgrade to the air purification system rather than just using a filter, a larger touchscreen in the middle, and then the last thing I saw was something to do with the integrated park brake, so I'm presuming that the Comfort one has a manual handbrake and then the Design, like this one, has an electric park brake. But that's what I could see anyway, so for £2,000, even the standard one I think is quite good value for money. Most importantly as well, they're all under £40,000, which means you don't need to pay that horrible premium road fund licence or road tax in the UK. Hey, just a quick one guys, if you're loving this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button just down below. I cover a few brands these days, so I do BYD, Volvo, BMW, Volkswagen, and of course Mercedes, which is a big part of my channel. So if you want to check out loads of reviews and tutorials, hit that subscribe button down below. And I've even got a members only area where you can see behind the scenes content that isn't shown to anyone else, and you can even watch next week's video before everyone else as well. Right, on with the tour. Now, when it comes to the boot, as you see here, is 555 litres. However, I have a slight problem because I'm 6'2". You have to be really careful not to bang your head on this because that is quite pointy and I think that would hurt. But yeah, annoyingly, it doesn't go up any higher than that. But hey ho. I mean, it is a small SUV, so these things don't always go that tall, but I just go careful of this bit. Now of course the two bags here are the charge cables, and there is a nice rubber mat there to keep it nice and tidy somewhat. But yeah, if we take these out, underneath the floor there's a load of space. Look at all that. Now, it's quite uncommon to see this on EVs because normally there's a bit of kind of build up a battery at the back under the floor, so you don't usually get that space, so that's pretty good. Now one other good thing, if you fold the seats down, it's a 60-40 split, it goes up to 1,338 litres. So yeah, all round a pretty good boot. It's just that this doesn't go too high. I just wish it was a little bit taller, but hey ho, I mean, if I had this car, I'd make it work. I'd just make sure I duck down. But yeah, do watch your head on that if you do opt for this car. Alright guys, so here are the rear seats. This is actually the first time I've sat in the back since you know, driving this for the past few days. And what I will do is just add, that's better, put that back in there so I can sit in the back in the seat properly. But yeah, this is my legroom. So legroom's great. I'm 6'2" with extremely long legs, so that is my driving position. So yeah, my knees just about are touching, but I could move that further forward. In terms of the back, there's a USB port here and USB-C, so that's pretty good. And then in the middle, we have cup holders. So again, that's good. At least it's not there, so your arm falls down the hole, but yeah, that's all good. Headroom, I'd say, is a little bit less. My hairs aren't touching, but they aren't that far off. So just something to note there. But yeah, in terms of the build quality, certainly in the rear, and we'll go through more of that in the front as well, in the little section on that, it's all really, really nice. Nice leathery, squidgy materials all here, everywhere. Manufacturers do like to spend quite a lot of time on their interiors to make sure they don't rattle. And certainly from a brand that some of you may have never heard of before. I know BYD is prominent in a lot of countries out there, but certainly it's not that well known in the UK. It is quite an important part that I know people are obviously curious about and want to know. But yeah, I mean, everything is quite nice. I will say that you probably saw the clip at the start with the kind of door storage with the what looks like a guitar string. Well, that one needs tuning compared to the front. But yeah, it's a bit odd. But I mean, having said that, some of these kind of like smaller EVs and smaller cars sometimes kind of have this like funky style. Certainly like the smart car, smart #1, smart #3 that I reviewed, they do kind of have that kind of trend. And yeah, I mean, I personally am not a huge fan of that sort of thing down there, but it wouldn't put me off buying a car if everything else was okay. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Right, well, let's have a look at the front with this massive slab of screen, which is laptop sized. It's huge. So yes, this screen here is 15.6 inches, which literally, as I mentioned, is laptop size. It has a very nifty party trick, so we're going to do that first, and then we'll check out some of the build quality and the kind of tour of storage and that sort of thing. So you can do this. You can spin the screen round just like in the BYD Seal. Now, I know some of you might be thinking right now, Nick, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to spin that round. It's just such a gimmick. You know, what if something goes wrong? I actually quite like a portrait screen because, hear me out here very quickly. if you are using the sat nav and say you're driving down this road here like this, and maybe, I don't know, motorway or something, if you have the sat nav in the portrait orientation, you can see a lot further. Look at all up here further you can see. So it just means navigating is that little bit easier, I think, but there's the option of spinning between the two. We'll come back to the multimedia system in a second. So a quick note on the build quality first. So when I had the Seal for the week before and I managed to do some long drives and that sort of thing, I've been doing the same with this car. I kind of went into it thinking, is it going to be any good? And that was the kind of title of that video, and maybe that's why, you know, quite a few people watched that one. But the same applies really with this one. I think when we think of like Chinese cars or Chinese EVs, we think, oh no, some bit's going to be cheap or like mass produced, but they are quite clever. There's a few things I have around the house, like for example my DJI drone. That's one of the best drones out there, best drone manufacturers, and there's plenty of other examples of you know, Chinese built things. And yeah, I've got to say again, leathery materials everywhere and all the things you touch. The handles on this, I will say, are a little bit funky because they open well, kind of like that, which is odd. Normally you'd pull this way, but yeah, this one you pull that way and then open that way. But yeah, in terms of the actual driving and that sort of thing, of course we'll go for a drive in a minute. It's very quiet in here, very, very similar to the BYD Seal, and I wouldn't really describe anything as cheap or that sort of thing. And even the screen as well. I remember someone in the comment section before said, oh, that's just another thing to go wrong. You'll be surprised how it, like, when it spins around, it properly clunks into place, and it barely moves. And there's not even any cheap plastics on the back of that either. So again, I gotta say, it's quite good. One little critical thing I might say is that the USB ports are like right down under there, so they're very difficult to like plug in. But if you are unplugging and plugging in cables constantly, it's just obviously something to bear in mind. But yeah, we'll do a quick tour, multimedia system, then we'll go through some tech specs, and then of course we'll take this out on the road. So in here we have a very large bit of space in there that goes all the way down. You can lose half of your arm going down there. It goes right down to the bottom. Cup holders here, and then an array of buttons here as well. So we'll go through a couple of those potentially in a minute. Gear stick here, and little storage area there, and then vents here. Now I remember reading somewhere that the inspiration for this was from a treadmill. A nice, very satisfying click to open and close. Now I know some of you even like my own daily car, which has touch buttons. These are physical buttons, so yeah, can't fault them on that. And the other thing as well is of course this gorgeous sunroof which goes all the way back there, so yeah, certainly lets in a lot of light. There is a blind in this one as well. If I remember on the BYD Seal there wasn't a blind, but it was heavily tinted. This is also heavily tinted from the looks of it as well, but there is a blind, so just in case you want to have the cover across. All round pretty good. Let's have a look at the multimedia system. This is the screen that you'll see when you first jump in. There's an array of different things you can do on here, from sat nav on the far left there, music in the middle, and of course radio there. And if you want other things, very much like Android, if you swipe across, this is where you'll see all the other things that this multimedia system can do. And I will say it's very, very responsive. What frustrates me the most in a car is when the multimedia system is very slow. I remember checking out one once years and years ago. You click a button and it's like probably about 2 seconds before it does anything. The refresh rate of this, I think, is at least 60 hertz. So it's almost like certainly up my phone, where the refresh rate refreshes a lot quicker. So it just makes it feel nice and quick as you go through the menus, nice and snappy. Now when you're using the sat nav, this is very, very clear and very easy to use. You have the search symbol up here on the top right, very easy, tapping on here where you'd like to go, and then start. Guidance will start now. Just like that. One thing that I've started to review also, and obviously make people aware when I am checking out things on the sat nav, especially when it comes to EVs, is the integration of searching for chargers. Now this does have this, but from what I've seen, certainly from just starting a route here for example, it doesn't plot those chargers onto a route like a Tesla would, for example. So if I go here, there is no way that this car would do that trip in one go, so you would need to stop. Now, yes, you can search for chargers, and certainly if you go on here, this will show you all the chargers nearby, and there's a filter on here at the moment that shows you all the fast chargers, which is kind of what you want if you're going to be charging in public anyway. Now, one thing I did note that if you do have, say, that long route on the sat-nav, you know, big old drive, 7 hours or so, if you tap on here, this will actually show you chargers along the route, which is very, very handy. It's just that as far as I can see, it doesn't plot those kind of destinations on the route for you. So certainly when you'd be getting like near, I guess, 20%, maybe 30%, you'd probably be wanting to do that. Correct me if I'm wrong, I certainly didn't see anything when testing this sat-nav system. One thing I will add though, if you're going to use Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it will force the screen into the landscape kind of style like this here. So you can't run Apple CarPlay or Android Auto in the portrait orientation, it must be landscape. It is nice to see it has Spotify integration as well, so you can use the car's data and kind of multimedia system to do that, so pretty good. And as I mentioned, there's an array of other things on here that you can go into view just in case. Now, last time I reviewed the Seal, a few of you mentioned that I didn't go through the voice assistant. So yes, this car does have a voice assistant, and it's activated by saying, "Hi BYD," or the word BYD. And I'm just going to cancel it here for a second because me talking over the top of it's just going to get confused. But you can ask it to do a variety of different things. For example, I asked it to put the heated seat on just a second ago. It's nice and toasty, but I think I'm done. I think I'm cooked. Hi BYD, turn off my heated seat.
Okay, turning off seat heating.
And you can see it's pretty quick. The one thing I will add, and I have had to have been careful while I've been talking about this, is that if I say the word BYD in a sentence, it does pick it up just like that, so it can get a little bit annoying. But yeah, it's good to have a voice assistant, certainly when you're focusing on driving, keeping hands on the wheel. You can just give it commands and it'll do a variety of different things. Now, one last thing before we go out is the climate control. Now, I mentioned this in the Seal review that I found it a little bit annoying with the climate control, certainly while using Apple CarPlay is what I use, although in an EV, I'd much rather use the inbuilt multimedia system. When you do have the climate control on, much like this here, all the climate control is touch. Now, yes, you can give it a command to adjust it all via voice, which is good. And there's, of course, an on and off button down here and auto fan speed. So pretty easy. I just wish that this kind of climate control bit was fixed down at the bottom so you could like easily adjust it no matter what you're doing on the screen. That would be my only thing to say about that. But yes, we'll have the climate control off now, and I think what we'll do now is take this out on the open road and let you know what it's like, certainly on those windy corners and the performance as well. But first, tech specs. Okay, so let's go through these tech specs. Now, I didn't mention earlier that this car does not have a frunk, and if you're going to lift this up, it does need to have its bonnet stay, which I haven't used in a while actually, because I know a lot of cars have the kind of self-supporting struts. But yeah, in here you can see the big slab of electric motor. And speaking of, let's go through those tech specs. Range of the Atto 3 goes up to 260 miles, which is of course WLTP, so that's Worldwide Harmonised Light Vehicles Test Procedure. This is achieved by a 60.4 kilowatt hour battery, meaning that the 0 to 62 time on this car is 7.3 seconds. We'll test that out in a minute. Now, another thing to note on charging is that BYD quote 30 to 80% in 30 minutes. So obviously that's for rapid charging, but obviously if you're going to charge at home, it'll take a little bit longer, but will be significantly cheaper. So this is how I've of course charged my car over this past week. Now you see DC charging 30 to 80% in, 30 or so minutes. That does sound pretty good, but if you look at the tech specs even closer, you'll notice that the max charge speed of DC is only around 88 kilowatts, which isn't that much. It's actually quite poor, to be honest, because most EVs will normally, at least at their peak, do at least 100, 120 or something like that, but some of them do 200 or 150 kilowatts. I think a couple of EVs will actually do like 300. It just means that it won't charge as fast all the time, so the slower DC charge speeds aren't the best. But if you're going to be charging at home, then it's not really the end of the world. For me, I would actually always want to try and charge at home because it's going to be cheaper. charging in public is obviously a lot more expensive, which I've made a video about before. So no, I don't think that's the end of the world, but if you're planning on doing long road trips, you're probably going to want faster DC charge speeds. Now, when it comes to safety, recently I saw in the news, and I feel like I should mention this because I'm sure someone's going to mention something in the comments, so I may as well say on video. Basically, what I saw in the news, that the BYD Atto 3 had been given the worst Euro NCAP driver assistance score ever. That was the headline. And reading into it, basically it was to do with the adaptive cruise, where it would just like turn off if you weren't paying attention. Because a lot of modern cars these days, when you're using adaptive cruise control, will slowly and safely bring you to a complete stop in case the driver just lost consciousness or something. This is some pretty cool tech. I would actually like to try this out one day on a car, on like a closed circuit or something. Not the unconscious bit, but actually just letting the car bring you to a safe and complete stop. Back in 2022, basically, when BYD had this kind of crash test done, it actually got 5 stars. So it's actually quite a safe car in terms of crash tests. It's just that one particular section on the driving autonomy kind of thing, I guess, in terms of things, it didn't do too well on. But apparently the Seal and the Dolphin have better tech, so they passed that with flying colours. It's just this one it didn't do too well in. But let's enjoy this car. And this being electric, it'll pick up the pace pretty quickly. Here you go, 60. We'll do a launch in a minute though. Test it. Now, one thing I will note on the driving, it feels kind of almost like floaty. So when you're driving around town, I don't think many people will notice this too much. But certainly if you're on some windy roads and having a little bit of fun, some spirited driving, if you will, you'll notice it is a little bit floaty in some places. So yeah, if you're driving this car and wanting that kind of engaging drive, maybe not for you, but just for pottering around, I think it's actually pretty good. Style-wise as well, as I mentioned earlier, it's very, very similar to the BYD Seal. Oh God, I need to stop saying that. Need to turn that off. It's so sensitive. As well, going back to the driver assistance stuff as well, you can actually turn off the kind of active steering assist and just use adaptive cruise. So if you find yourself not confident in using a system, then you can limit it down a bit just to do adaptive cruise without the kind of steering assistance in the lanes. But yeah, now I think we will do a launch and test their 0 to 62 time of 7.3 seconds. That's what they claim anyway. Okay, let's try this launch. Okay, what's the time? 7.18 do I see? Is that faster? Okay. Wow, there we go. I will say that launch is slightly different in this because normally with electric, it's quite punchy fast, whereas this, you put your foot down and it slowly feeds in the power, so it would be very tricky to wheel spin the car, which I guess is kind of a safe thing. Just means it won't pull away that quick, and but yeah, I mean, that's its 0 to 62, so yeah, there we are. On to pros and cons. Now, just as we get to the pros and cons, there's one slight annoying thing. I'm not going to put it on the pros and cons, but it is slightly annoying. All electric cars have to emit a sound to basically let other road users know that you're there, just like an engine would. But the one in this sounds like an alien spaceship. It's directly linked to the turning of the wheels, which is good, which is what they're, you know, kind of designed to do. But it's just constantly like kind of humming when it's under 15 miles an hour, and it then fades away like that, but every time you slow down, it comes back. I did note that you can actually change the tone of it. There's a standard and dynamic. I did find dynamic is actually a little bit quieter, which is a bit more acceptable, but it's interesting to see what different car manufacturers do with, because that's an EU regulation. All cars have to do that. They have to emit some sort of sound, but some car manufacturers do a kind of sound, or some kind of where are you going? Some car manufacturers basically emit a kind of sound, or some do a hum. BMW do like Hans Zimmer soundtracks and things like that, so it's interesting. Alright guys, pros and cons. Now starting with the pros first, and this is probably the biggest one. Basically the list price of this car is under £40,000, which means, yes, I've heard that the road front licence or car tax is now being implemented to EVs as well. I'll probably make a video about that in the future. But when it comes to the premium tax, when you kind of go over that £40,000 threshold, this car isn't in that because it's under 40. So really good to see. That's definitely a pro in my book. The next one I would say is that this is a nice practical SUV. Obviously we've touched on the price. The actual size wise, it's got plenty of room in here. I'd say the headroom's a little bit less, but having said that, it still is nice. The legroom's good as well, but it's not on the point of being too big, as I do know that there are some big SUVs out there, and quite often people don't actually really need an SUV that big. So yeah, good on that front. The final thing as well is that the level of standard equipment that you get, you know, the screens, admittedly there's obviously 2 screen sizes, but having said that, even on the standard screen size, it's still good to see. Sunroof as well, just the kind of whole package you get with everything all included, and then you just choose your kind of colour, which is just so easy and very refreshing. Now onto the cons. So obviously the thing I touched on when we were driving is the kind of slower DC charge speed. Obviously bear in mind that that's what's quoted, so it will be statistically a lot less than that most of the time, which means, you know, at its peak you'll be charging, you know, pretty fast, but most of the time if you're charging a DC it will be a lot less than that. Hopefully, obviously, as I mentioned, you'll be charging at home, so that won't really be much of an issue. But if you're going to be doing lots of road trips, something to factor in. The other con is, of course, BYD's price in the UK. Because they're being imported from China, they are subject to this kind of like tariff tax, which means they're just a more expensive car here, whereas around the other side of the world, they're sold for a lot less. So it's a shame on that front, because if this was thousands of pounds less, then obviously it changes, you know, a reviewer's views and that sort of thing. It would receive different kind of levels of criticism and acceptance for certain things, but because it's sold at a higher price here, everyone who obviously gets their hands on it just expects more from it. And then the final one is, of course, something I picked up on the BYD Seal review, is there's no physical buttons for climate control. Yes, I know you can do it over here on the instrument cluster. There's an on and off button and an auto button here, but there's no easy way to control the temperature via a button. Yes, you can do it on the screen, but obviously there are some manufacturers that do buttons, and I know people appreciate that, so I'd just like to make it nice and clear for everyone. Also, another thing that I only found out filming the day after when it rained is that for some reason the BYD Atto 3 does not have a rain sensor. While I certainly couldn't see one cycling through all the different modes on the wiper stalk, it only offers an intermittent wipe, something to also note. Now, one thing that caught my eye and shocked me is that the BYD Seal, this car, the BYD Atto 3, and a couple of other models are actually being sold in a Mercedes-Benz showroom under the same roof, in a dealer group in the UK called LSH Auto, and in their flagship dealership, Mercedes-Benz of Stockport, they're selling BYD cars on their first floor, meters away from Mercedes. We live in interesting times for sure. Let me know your thoughts below and whether I should travel to them and check it out. So there we go now guys, that concludes this week's video on the BYD Atto 3. Before you go anywhere, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Give us a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course hit that subscribe button if you want to see more videos just like this. Thank you so much for watching. Till next time, see you then.